Acts chapter 25, verses 1 to 27, Festus and Agrippa. I suppose you could add Felix to this because Felix was the procurator, a sort of a governor, set as such by the Roman government, and Felix was replaced by Festus, as we saw in the last section. Now, Felix was married to Drusilla, and Drusilla was a sister to King Agrippa II, who we'll meet later in this chapter. It begins in verse 1, Festus un epivas te eparchia meta tris imeris. Then Festus, having set foot in the jurisdiction after 3 days, aneviis Jerusalema, he ascended unto Jerusalem, apo Caesarias, from Caesarea. And here's a map, and you can see down below here where Jerusalem goes up to Caesarea. So Festus came apparently to Caesarea. He goes down to Jerusalem, spends some time there, and then goes back up to Caesarea. In verse 2, and the Phanisan they avto o archirefs, and the chief priest revealed to him, ke e protiton Iudeon, and the foremost men of the Jews, kata to Pavlu, the things against Paul. Ke parakalun afton, and they appealed to him. I tumani harin kat of two, asking a favor against him, opos metapempsite afton is Jerusalem, that he should fetch him unto Jerusalem, because Paul was up there in Caesarea, put into the Herod's fortress in Caesarea. Porcius Festus, who we see here, was a Roman procurator between 59 to 62 AD, and many of the things during his reign were things that affected the Jewish war in 66. You can go into Wikipedia and read about Festus. There was a coin that was minted by Festus for the Roman Caesar at the time. So they want to bring Paul down from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Why? It says, Enedron piuntes anelin afton katatin odon, while making an ambush to do away with him along the way. An ambush, 1747, first mention is in Joshua 8:7, where it says, and you shall rise up from the ambush. And this was an ambush that was set by the sons of Israel around the city of Ai to draw them out, to kill them. The next mention of an ambush is Psalms 10:8, where it says, he lies in wait to ambush with the rich in concealment, to kill the innocent. And that's talking about the sinner. The sinner lays an ambush for us to catch us, that we would fail. Verse 4, then omen un Festos apokrithi peristhe ton Pavlon in Caesarea. Then Festus responded for Paul to be kept in Caesarea, so he didn't allow him to come down to Jerusalem. Eavton the melin in taki ek porevisthe, but he himself was about to quickly go forth. Festus was going to head back up to Caesarea. Eun dinati en imin, and then the ones mighty among you, Phaesi, says he, sing katavantes, having gone down from Jerusalem, et estin atopon ento andri tuto, if anything is out of place in this man, categori tosan of two, let them accuse him, basically up there in Caesarea. Verse 6, via tripsas they in aftis imerus plius e deca. Then having spent time among them more than 10 days in Jerusalem, katavas is Caesarion, having gone down unto Caesarea, Teopavrion, Kathisus epitu vimatos, ekelev se ton pavlon akthene. So now, again, going down means from Jerusalem, you go down any direction. Normally, if you mention going to Caesarea from Jerusalem, you'd say up to Caesarea on a map, but that's not the case. And so now he's went back up to Caesarea, and in verse 7, paragenomenu they avtu, and he having come periestisan e apo Ierusalimon katavevikotes Iudei, he having come, there stood around the Jews having come down from Jerusalem to accuse him. Pola ke varea e teometa pharontes kata, with many and grievous accusations bringing against to Pavlu, to Paul. Auk e iskion apodixe, which they were not able to exhibit. They didn't have proof for what they were accusing him of. To exhibit, to expose. Interesting word, number 584. It's also used, exhibit or to expose. Acts 2:22, it says, Men, Israelites, hear these words. Jesus a Nazarene, a man from God, exhibited unto you powers and miracles and signs which God did through him in our midst, to exhibit something for people to see. And they were not able to exhibit this to Festus. 1 Corinthians 4:9, it says, For I think that God exhibited us apostles last as condemned to death, for we became a theater to the world and to angels and to men, exhibiting again. 2 Thessalonians 2:4 says, So as for him to sit in the temple of God, exhibiting himself that he is God, that is the man of sin. So he is going to be exhibiting himself to show people that he is God. So we'll know when he appears, when he does this. You can go in and study that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Very interesting. Applies, I believe, possibly to today. Going back to verse 8, apologumenu avtu, and while of his pleading, saying that, oti, ute iston nomon, neither against the law, and this would be Paul pleading, neither against the law, ton iutheon, ute is to iaron, of the Jews, nor against the temple, ute is Caesara, ti imarton, nor against Caesar, in anything I sinned. In verse 9, O Festus tis iudeis, thelon harin, katatheste, but Festus, wanting to lay down favor with the Jews, he's new there, wants to be in good terms with them, apokrithis to Pavlo, having responded to Paul, Epe said, Thelis is Jerusalema anavas aki peri tuto krinaste ep emu. Are you willing, having ascended unto Jerusalem, to be judged by me there concerning these things? So he wants Paul to go down to Jerusalem to placate the Jews who found Jerusalem would be a better place to have him condemned, again to ambush him on the way. Verse 10, Ipe de o Pavlos, then Paul said, Epi tu vimatos Caesaros estos imi, unto the rostrum of Caesar I am having stood. Ume the krinesthei, of which it's necessary for me to be judged. He's standing in front of a Roman procurator, governor, and this is basically a person that has been designed to be there by Caesar. So Paul wants to be judged by Caesar, the Romans, not by the Jews. And he says, Iudeus uden idikisa. To Jews no one have I wronged, oske si kalion, epigenoskis, as also you will realize. So he knew that there was no evidence. Festus knew that also, and Paul knew that Festus knew. And so he continues in 11, Imen gar adiko ke axion thanatu pepraxa ti, for if indeed I do wrong, and I have acted in anything worthy of death, ou pare tume to apothanin. I do not ask pardon to die. Eithe uden estin on uti categorusi mu, but if there is nothing of which they charge me, udis me dinate aftis harisasthe, no one can grant me to them, because he's a Roman citizen. Can't make me do it. Caesara epikalume, to Caesar I call upon. In verse 12, Tote o Festos silalisas meta tu symvoliu. Then Festus, having conversed together with the council, now exactly what council this was, Jews or Romans, I don't know, apekrithi, Caesara epikekklise, responded, to Caesar you have called upon, epikaisara porevsi, to Caesar you shall go. So we're going to send you to Caesar. Then it switches over here a little to Bernice and Agrippa. Imeron they diagenomenon tenon, and some days having elapsed, Agrippas o Vasileus. This is Agrippa the second, ke verniki katintisan is Caesarion, and Bernice arrived at Caesarea. Well, most people would think that would be his wife, but history says something different. This Agrippa II reigned from approximately 27 AD to possibly up to 100 AD through the destruction of Jerusalem. He was the final Herodian monarch, and he was the son of Agrippa I and great-grandson of Herod the Great. He was educated in Rome, and he was the brother of Drusilla, the wife of Felix, who was before Festus. He was the procurator of Judea. Felix's wife, was the brother of Agrippa II. Agrippa II, the king here, Verniki, where you see it here, is not Bernice, but in Greek it's what looks like a B is va, Verniki. The accent on the iota. Verniki was his sister. And we read in Josephus that he had a close relationship, possibly incestuous relationship with her brother, Agrippa. And Josephus was a close friend of Agrippa, so he would have known firsthand what was going on. Josephus wrote the history of the Jews. And Agrippa, the king here, was never married, which leads people to believe more that he was in an incestuous relationship with Verniki. But Verniki, she was the daughter of, again, Herod Agrippa I, brother. So these two were brother and sister. And she was widowed twice before this happened, and when in her 40s. And both husbands died. And later on, after this, she had an affair with Titus, who became Caesar in Rome and came to fight against the Jews in the Jewish War. So Agrippa and his sister were very instrumental being against the Jews and taking the side of the Romans, even though Agrippa and Bernice were Jews themselves, royalty, but they were for the Romans. So these two arrived at East Caesarea and Caesarea Aspasomene ton Feston, saluting Festus. Verse 14, Oste plius imeras theatrivon aki. Then when they spent many days there, Ophistos to Vasili, Festus to the king, presented the things relating to Paul, enetheto ta kata ton Pavlon. So Festus tells the king, in what? Legon, saying, Anirtis esti kataleli menos hypo philikos. There is a certain man having been left by Felix, Vesmios, a prisoner. Peri u genomenu mu is Jerusalema, concerning of which, on my having been in Jerusalem, enaphanisan e archiaris, ke e presbyteri ton iudeon. The chief priests and the elders revealed, of the Jews revealed Paul, basically, itumeni kat aftu the king, asking for punishment against him. Verse 16, pros us apokrithin, to whom I answered, oti uk estin ethos, that it is not a custom, Romeos, harizeste, tina anthropon, is apolion, prin eo categorumenos, kata prosopon, eki tus categorus. It's not the custom of the Romans to grant any man for destruction, so they wanted to have him put to death, basically, not just to judge him before the one being accused, Paul, may have the accusers face to face. Toponte apologias lavi, and may receive a place of defense, peri to eklimatos, concerning the indictment. So he has to be in front of a Roman. He's telling King Agrippa. So now the Roman law that he's talking about is basically a law that applied even into the 1790s in most of Western Europe. The Roman law, you can, if you're interested in Roman law, there's a lot in Wikipedia on that. In verse 17, sinel thonton un afton enthade, then they having come here, anavolin midamian pisamenos ti, anavolin midamian pisamenos, not having made a delay, ti exis kathisos epi to vimatos, in the next day having seated at the rostrum, ekel levsa akthine ton anthra, I bid the man to be led in. Now the rostrum is interesting. We went through that in Acts 7:5. It's also called a stool. In Deuteronomy 2:5, it says, for not in any way will I give to you of their land, nor a stool for your feet. In Acts 7:5, it says, and he did not give to him an inheritance in it, nor a footstool for his feet, with Abraham. So the stool But now this is used as a piece of utility, not a piece of government. In Nehemiah 8:4 it says, "And Ezra the scribe stood upon a wooden rostrum he made for delivering a public address." So the Vima is something that a person stands on and talks to others in one way or another, and religious or civil or so forth. Isaiah 26:6 says, "And gentle feet will tread them, and of humble rostrums," that is, people guarding righteousness. Humble rostrums, that means it will take their side, more or less. In Matthew 27:19, it says, "And of his sitting down upon the rostrum," that's Pontius Pilate, "his wife sent to him, saying, Let there be nothing between you and that just one." So this was at the time right before the crucifixion. John 19:13 says, "Then Pilate, hearing this word, put Jesus outside and sat upon the rostrum, in the place being called Lithostratus, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha," someplace close to the temple, I believe, but it wasn't in the temple. Herod, the king, had an address to the people, I believe, of Tyre in Acts 12:21, and then he died right after that because he claimed that he had all this power and didn't give it glory to God. Acts 18:12 says, "And Gallio, being proconsul of Achaia, the Jews rose up against Paul with one accord and led him unto the rostrum." So this Gallio drove them away from the rostrum. He didn't want to hear of these Jews. And then Sosthenes was beaten before the rostrum when this happened. Romans 14:10, it says, "But all of us will stand before the rostrum of the Christ." So Christ will be on a rostrum. Now, this rostrum is not the judgment of whether you go to Hades or whether you go to Uranos, heaven, but it's the people that are with Jesus. Where it's going to be exactly, it doesn't say. New Jerusalem, possibly. And then 2 Corinthians 5:20, it says more about that with saying, "For all the ones of us must be manifested before the rostrum of the Christ," of us. So it's not of the unbelievers, "that each should receive the things of the body, as to what he practiced, whether good or whether bad," according to the body. So that's quite a condemnation for us sinners when we do face Jesus of what we have done in the body. Now, what body is it talking about? The body of Christ or the body of a person? What he practiced. So the he would lead me to believe it was a person. So what sins that we have done with our bodies, we are going to be in front of the rostrum. How Christ decides as far as whether good or bad, we'll find out the hard way, unfortunately, so we want to do the right thing. In verse 18, "Periu, concerning of which, stathentes e categori," the accusers having stood up. So now, again, Festus is telling Agrippa about this earlier incident with Paul. And he says, "Oudemion tion epipheron on epanon ego." They brought no accusation, which I suspected. He thought, well, Paul must have done something really terrible to want to put him to death. In verse 19, "Zitimata they tina peritis idias visi demonias ikon pros avton," but certain matters concerning their own reverence of God they had against him. So it had something to do with the religious attitudes towards the people and Paul, not anything to do with the Romans. "Ke peri tinos isu tethnikotas," and concerning a certain Jesus having died, "on ephasken o Pavlos Zine, whom Paul maintained to be alive. In verse 20, Aporumenos they ego tin peritutu zitisin, and I, being perplexed concerning this inquiry, Eligon said, he's perplexed because it's like, what's going on here? Who are these people? I mean, it's nothing to do with us to put them to death. And so he says, E vulito poreveste is Jerusalem, shall he be willing to go into Jerusalem, kaki krinaste peri tuton, and there to be judged concerning these things. So I wanted Paul to go down to Jerusalem, but it says in 21, to the Pavlu, but Paul, epikalasamenu, tiri thine av ton istin to savastu viagnosin. But Paul, having called upon himself to be kept for the inquiry of Augustus. These two words are interesting. Sevastu was an honorific term for the Roman emperor. So the emperor in diagnoskein means the venerable. And I have the inquiry. I don't see where that's. I might change that to 1233, which is diagnosin, the venerable one. The only place it appears is called an apax legomenon, a word that only appears one time in the Bible. And this is an interesting subject because many of these Roman terms only appear in the New Testament maybe one time. Here's one of them right here. The Savastu, or two of them actually, they're both apax legomenon. And then it continues, so he wanted to be kept for the inquiry of the venerable Roman Caesar. And then ekelevsa tiristhe avton eos u pempso avton pros Caesara. And I bid to keep him until of which I should send him forth to Caesar. So he's keeping him in Caesarea at the compound of Herod. In verse 22, Agrippas they proston fiston ephi. Then Agrippa said to Festus, Evulomin ke avtos tu anthropu accuse. I wanted also myself to hear the man. O de avrion fisin accusi avtu. And the morrow he says, Festus, you shall hear him. You're going to hear him tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll set it up. Verse 23, ti un epavrion elthontus tu Agrippa ke tis vernicis, meta polis fantasias. Then the next day, Agrippa and Bernice, having come with much visible display, his sister, not his wife, ke isel thonton is to acroatyrion sinte tis heliarchos, and having entered into the auditorium with the commanders, these were heliarchs over many men, they all enter into this acroatyrion, which is an auditorium, and then ke andrasi tis kat exohin usi tis polios, and men of prominence being of the city, also with the king, ke kelevsantes tu festu, and Festus having bid, ikthi o Pavlos, Paul was led in. Ke physin o Festos Agrippa Vasilef, and Festus says, King Agrippa, Vasilef, king, ke pantes e, all the men, sim parontes emin andros, men being present with us, theorite tuton peri u pan to plethos ton iutheon enetikon me. You view this one concerning of which all the multitude of the Jews interceded with me, and te Jerusalemos ke enthade, in both Jerusalem and here, epivoontes mithin zin avton miketi, yelling out aloud, he must not live any longer. This is what they're crying out. They want him dead. In verse 25, so their intention was not justice, but their intention was murder. In verse 25, egothe katalavomenos mithen axion thanatu avton peprachene. But I, having perceived him to have done nothing worthy of death, says Festus as he's explaining this, ke avtu they tuto epikalesamenu ton savaston. And this one also himself, having called upon Augustus, ekrina pempsin avton, I judged to send him. Periu asphales ti grapse to curio uk echo, concerning of which I have anything safe to write to my Lord, to Caesar. Nothing bad about the man. What do? I mean, put himself between the rock and a hard place. Theo proi gagon avton f imon. Therefore I led him unto you. And now you decide what you want to do. Kemali sta epi su Vasilev Agrippa, especially unto you, O King Agrippa. Opos tis anakrisios genomenes, so that the examination having taken place, sko ti grapse, I should have something to write. So here it is. Can you help me out? Verse 27. Alagongar me doki pemponta desmion, for it seems illogical to me to send forth a prisoner, mike tas kat afton etias simene, not signifying the accusations against him. So, the proof. An accusation or the faults is also another English word used for this, number 156. Etias, or a reason. In Genesis 4:13, it says, and Cain said to the Lord, my fault is too great to forgive me. So you can see it depends on the context, as many of the Greek words do. Here, it's my fault. You wouldn't put an accusation because nobody's really accusing him. Proverbs 28:17 says, the one guaranteeing a loan of a man under accusation of murder will be in exile and not in safety. So here we have accusation of murder. In Matthew 19:3 it says, is it allowed to a man to dismiss his wife for any reason? Well, or you could use fault, which I'm probably going to change Matthew 19:3. Is it allowed to a man to dismiss his wife for any fault? So now the king has heard, and Paul's defense against King Agrippa will be in our next section.